comic book cover's job, as we've discussed before, is to try and get you interested in what's inside of it. After all, most comic shops, at least the few that I've been in, don't appreciate you pawing through a comic book before buying it, since they're usually not that long and don't want to risk losing out on a sale because of someone deciding to read the whole issue then and there. To this end, as I've pointed out several times through the series, the Sonic comic books were rather masterful at this. The cover compositions of this series are really something to behold, even in its early years. Patrick Spaziante has my utmost respect for making something beautiful to look at with almost every issue in this era, and this one is no exception. With Sonic knelt down to gather a power ring from the pool while being stalked in the background by, well, what do you know, more combots. The brilliant thing about this is, due to its heavy use of green in the background and the fact that your eyes immediately focus on Sonic and the ring in the foreground, you don't see the robots themselves for a brief moment when you first look at this. So when you catch sight of the powerful searchlights and the red eyes, it's as much a surprise to you as it is to Sonic. Why do I bring this up? Well, this is a perfect example of a comic using a great cover to sell itself to you when the actual contents aren't that good. And we see that when we open to the very first page, where, hoo boy, this artwork. Pencils are handled by one Manny Galan this time, with inking done by Phil Sheehy. And it's off-putting. Let's go with that. Yeah, off-putting. I do appreciate that we start off immediately with some nice continuity. Tails and Antoine are out near Robotropolis in the middle of a storm, waiting on Sonic to assist them with a scouting mission so that they can report to Sally what the damage is like after the earthquake in the last issue. And Sonic zooms up, armed with a power ring, a bizarre-looking smirk, and humming the Saturday morning cartoon theme. You're trying to butter me up, comic, but it won't work. Sonic, Tails, and Antoine take a moment to examine the SWAT bots working to repair the city, but it doesn't take more than a moment before they're ambushed by a small group of combots. Sonic goes for the quick, direct approach, immediately attacking them while Tails and Antoine assist in what I have to admit is a well-choreographed but short fight scene before one of the bots is struck by lightning, knocking Sonic out badly. While Antoine stays with him to make sure he's alright, Tails takes off to go and find the others. He comes back later with Sally, Bunny, and Rotor just as Sonic comes to. They're glad to see he's okay, but I think they should worry about themselves a bit, especially Bunny. I think her robot parts are actually getting bigger this time. With the combots back up and running, they know it's only a matter of time before Robotnik's network is back online, so Sonic decides to immediately spring into action, only to fall flat on his face. Sonic's surprised to see Bunny keeping up with him, before they all realize that Sonic seems to have completely lost his speed. Rotor offers some sort of long-winded explanation about lightning and the energy in the combot and anti-inertia fields and the energy of the power ring, which only serves to make Sonic more than a little annoyed. Nicole states that due to the nature of the power rings being able to give him a boost of speed, possessing multiple rings at once might restore his lost power. The group makes their way back to the forest in the hopes of getting more rings, but they're once again attacked by combots making use of their cloaking ability. While Bunny does manage to put at least one of them down, the rest of them, sans Sonic, are captured one by one. And while Sonic manages to overload one by sacrificing his power ring, he has to dive into the nearby lake to avoid the explosion. They leave without making sure that Sonic's actually dead, of course, and with the other freedom fighters in tow. Sonic is brought back up by Penelope. Oh boy, they're back, guys. Yes, Sonic is now joining forces with the substitute freedom fighters in order to find and save his friends. This can only go so well. They reconvene at a safe house where the leader of the spy network, Fly Freddy, a character who just looks like he fits right in with this comic, doesn't he? Outlines where the others are being held inside a secondary laboratory. He and Sleuth Doggy Dog, I still hate that name, head out in their disguises while we get Sonic giving us his best worried, pouty lip, while he exposits that he's rather worried about attempting anything like this without his speed. They manage to sneak into the building, no problem, but are immediately caught in a trap surrounded by combots and Robotnik, Sonic's friends and roboticizers off to the side. What's more, Robotnik seems to know that Sonic's powerless now. Sonic and his friends attempt to fight off the combots, and Sonic shows off that he's still fairly athletic even without his speed, but they're completely outmatched. Sonic laments that he doesn't have enough power rings to try Nicole's theory before remembering that, in addition to the one he got back at the lake, he also had a second one right in his backpack. And as luck would have it, the bits from the combat he blew up with the first one is right there, being salvaged, and it still has the ring embedded in its chest. My, how narratively convenient, The robots dogpile Sonic, but he manages to blow them away with the power of the combined rings he's carrying, and all it takes is a powerful spin to decimate the rest of the robots. Sonic stands triumphant, and I guess all of his friends got out of their cages at some point, while Sonic declares he'll end Robotnik here and now. But Robotnik just laughs and drops through the floor with Snively, informing them that he set a bomb to go off in the lab in 60 seconds. And then boom, and then everyone's outside. Wow, that was disjointed. But at least everyone's okay after that explosion that doesn't even seem to have happened, given that we don't actually see the effects of the bomb in the last panel, while Sonic promises that the next time he fights Robotnik, it will be on his terms. And then we're teased with Knack appearing in the future for some reason, and I'm just left scratching my head. Well, holy crap, this thing was all over the frickin' place. I'm honestly still trying to formulate thoughts on how I feel about this story, but it's definitely not positive. First off, we don't have our usual writers on board for this story, instead having it written by a newcomer, Kent Taylor, and while I will say he at least did his homework on what happened before, referencing the earthquake in the last issue, bringing up the substitute freedom fighters, reminding us that Sleuth exists for some reason, the story itself just feels really off. Sonic losing his speed is supposed to be this big shocking deal, but in actuality it barely changes the way the story progresses, really only acting as the catalyst for a kidnapping and rescue mission down the line. And even for a comic book explanation, the way he loses his speed doesn't have any gravity to it. Not that it matters, we barely stay in one place long enough to see just how his lost speed is affecting him. The pacing in this book is pretty atrocious. I've spoken before how some of these stories move too fast for their own good, but this is like one of those stories if you hit the skip button several times. The beginning part is actually fairly well done, but once Sonic loses his speed and that becomes the central conflict, that's when it all falls apart, as we cut from Robotropolis to the woods outside Knothole, then to the safe house, then to Robotropolis one last time, with little transition between them, and the last few scene cuts, especially the escape from the explosion, are just terrible with how they're handled. In my own positive mind, I want to believe that this was due to the script running long and several panels having to be cut, but maybe it was also due to inexperience on the writer's part? Might also have something to do with the fact that Kent Taylor is a pseudonym for the editor for this book, Scott Fulop. I don't know, I just know that this story wasn't told very well. In terms of art, well, I've already stated a few times that I wasn't really a big fan of the artwork this time. I actually like the idea of how this comic is stylized, but I really don't think it works for these characters. Some of the panels are alright, and I do think that the first action scene has some good flow to it, but the rest of the time it just looks really off, especially with the characters that end up in the background or close-ups on the characters' faces. Seriously, the detailing on Sonic's lips here is just scary. Oh, and then there's Robotnik, who just looks like a giant blob. He kinda reminds me of the overweight people in WALL-E, not that Snively is much better most of the time he shows up here. But on the plus side, the backgrounds look great. They're lush, they have great detail, a lot of them really pop and stand out. It's just a shame that the stuff in the foreground isn't that good. But before we close the book, we have a backup story to look at, and I'll admit I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one because it's a fairly simple, feel-good one-shot parody. Sonic's not feeling that good, so Tails decides to cheer him up by reading him some comic books that he wrote and drew himself. The one he reads him being a very obvious parody of the origins of the Fantastic Four, and also managing to throw in a Galactus parody, and even a comic book hostess ad parody while they're at it. It's harmless, a nice cool down from the breakneck absurdity of the main story, and with artwork that is better, but more on the stiff side. Though I admit Robotnik as Galactus is pretty damn brilliant, and I want to shake the hand of whoever came up with it. Next time it's on to issue 39 when we begin the lead-in to what will become our next special, Mecha Madness. I'll see you all next time, everyone.